economic freedom fighters say they're vowing to continue their pro-democracy protests at the borders of the Kingdom of Eswatini. Hundreds of EFF supporters marched to the Oeshoek Border crossing to show solidarity with the citizens of Eswatini. The Mountain Kingdom has seen a series of political protests in the last few days. Activists have been calling for a multi-party democratic dispensation. The EFF says the picket would have had a bigger turnout, but Swazi authorities prevented buses from crossing into South Africa. Newzroom Afrika senior reporter Tamala Cloudy was there for us today. Tamala, good afternoon to you. What's been happening there today?
Well, a very lively day at the Oeshoek Border post, Stephen. Certainly a lot livelier than they usually used to, particularly under the COVID-19 lockdown and the restrictions that, in terms of traveling, had been implemented therein. But the EFF supporters certainly made their presence felt, marching right to the gate of the Oeshoek Border post and saying that, in fact, the numbers that we saw today, it was quite a large number, relatively large number. They say that even more numbers could have been drawn to this particular protest, but the leaders were conscious and cognizant of COVID-19 restrictions, although it must be said that many of the EFF supporters were wearing their masks, but many more were not. And the EFF leadership are saying that in terms of a situation like this, a lot of other people just joined their particular protest because they are also crying out with what's happening in Swaziland. So they got there and they basically told authorities that they want South Africa to do more, to exert pressure on the Swazi national government in the kingdom there. They say that they want talks to open, which should be mediated by South Africa, and these talks will be towards instituting a true democratic process in the country where you can have free and fair elections. And currently they say that what is happening is a system that is just based on patronage, and only those who agree with and serve to protect the monarch's interests are the ones who are selected to go to what they call a farce of a parliament, because they say that the parliament is doing nothing to protect or defend their people. They're raising some serious issues, saying that their counterparts in Swaziland have been protesting so violently, leading to reports of people being killed by security forces. They say that this is happening on a daily, although we have not been able to independently confirm that, but reports are coming out of Swaziland that indeed the police crackdown on protests is quite severe. They're saying that this is to maintain the status quo because they are complaining that the health department in Swaziland, for instance, has not even come up with a proper plan as to how people will be vaccinated, despite the fact that we see that the COVID-19 pandemic continues to wreak havoc right across the region and the continent.
We've seen those protests. We've seen some of the impact of those protests. We've seen journalists working for South African organizations tell us about their being tortured by police in Eswatini. I would imagine the EFF leadership is very critical of the government of King Mswati.
Extremely critical of the government of King Mswati, and they certainly didn't hold back in terms of the barbs they were throwing, saying that they are outraged that the government of King Mswati continues to spend lavishly on his personal belongings, items, on his personal comfort, things like personal vehicles, luxury vehicles, luxury trips, they mentioned, saying that how is this possible? How can a parliament that is meant to represent the people, defend the people, and serve the interests of the people who are facing this devastating pandemic, rubber stamp such extravagant purchases when that money could be used to shore up what they say is already an ailing health system. So they're saying that the EFF chapter within Swaziland is working very hard on the ground to mobilize, and they won't stop. They say they will not be deterred by the strong-handed reaction from the government there. Of course, they're also saying that the government is starting to block cell phone coverage so that they won't communicate, so people won't hear what is happening on the ground. So as far as the EFF in South Africa is concerned, they say they will continue to mount pressure. They will continue to hold protests and disrupt the border gate there, just to send a message that they have not forgotten their counterparts in Eswatini, and they hope that the South African government is looking and will want to come on board and do more.
Do we see them wanting also the South African government to do something? I mean, SADC has been there. Our government has said that it condemns any violence used against protesters. Quite a strong condemnation, really, from our government and, in fact, our governing party, the ANC. Is the EFF asking for our government to do something?
The EFF is asking for our government to do something. They say that, you know, as the Eswatini is a landlocked country, it's surrounded right around by South African territory and, of course, neighboring countries in the SADC region. So they're saying that the South African government, with that much kind of influence in terms of the economic pressure it can put on the authorities to bring them to the table. Effectively, what they're saying is that the answer and the solution to the problem in Swaziland is not necessarily an overhaul of their current political system in terms of the governance of the country. They are saying that their people are very proud of their heritage and very proud of their system. It's just that it needs to evolve, it needs to adapt, and it needs to be moved further and forward and into this particular millennium, so to speak. And they say that that can only be achieved if South African government can coerce the Swazi authorities to introduce a multi-party democratic dispensation. This is what they are calling for. And they say that this will be achieved if everyone can go to the polls, where you have free and fair polls. And those free and fair polls would ensure that the will of the people is represented. Currently, they're saying that those who are in positions of authority, including in security forces, as well as other key sectors within the government, are effectively handpicked by the monarch, King Mswati.
Tamala Moklade, our senior reporter near the border between South Africa and Eswatini. I do appreciate the time. Thanks very much indeed.